I think one of the things that is egregious is the fact that gender-based violence is preventable, and we just have to be smart about when we start to teach this, but also to invest in this because it's important. So we will fund organizations that do work with girls and young people, gender diverse folks, to talk about what is a healthy relationship. What does it look like? Really exploring what are the signs of something that is healthy, but also know what are the signs of something that is not healthy. You know, being able to recognize control and coerciveness and know what that looks like, so that, you know, before they go into, you know, higher education, especially, you know, on campuses, that they get that and they get that to their core, so they can bring that teaching as they bring other teachings that are mandatory in schools.
Does anybody else want to jump in on education, or shall I?
I mean, I'm not a pedagogical expert, but I think, you know, again, I think of all of this not just as a woman and a feminist who's been engaged in trying to combat gender-based violence for years, but again, as my responsibilities as a mother of a young boy now. We're going to have a conversation at some point about hugs are lovely, but touching another person's body without their consent is not okay. So we've got to respect when people want to be touched and when they don't want to be touched. And it starts, we're going to have those conversations with them at a very young age. And I think as, you know, there's a parental responsibility there, but also as simple as it's someone's body, you know, they get to say who, when, how exactly. And that's a sort of fundamental premise of, you know, education of youth generally, I think.
Great. So Harmy, I want to come to you because I want to ask about what you talked about, you have this important report on employers, and I want to ask you about what can employers do to prevent gender-based violence at the workplace, but also handling the impact of gender-based violence that their employees are experiencing. And I want to tie it to a question that Janan here asked on one of the audience members, saying oftentimes training related to gender-based violence is given to senior leadership teams and human resources, HR, but oftentimes individual contributors or others in the organization are removed from these trainings. In what ways do you envision these trainings being given more broadly, or what would be the way, you know, Paulette, you were talking about, you know, people being trained in the signal or help. How do we spread this knowledge more broadly inside organizations? So I'll start with you, Harmy.
Yes, employers can do a lot by shifting from minimizing liabilities to creating a culture of respect. And that requires not only employers, but colleagues or coworkers to be part of it. We have found that employers will need a wide range of supports, activities that they need to integrate into their workplace. And I'm gonna leave you with 3 words. If I can ask you for anything, remember these 3 words when you leave today. And if you're an employer or a coworker, APR. A for accountability, P for prevention, and R for response systems. And I'm going to illustrate them and then maybe elaborate a little bit more on your question. Accountability, it's all about assessment. I'm gonna ask a question. I don't want you to answer to anybody, just to yourself. Assessment under accountability. As an employer or a colleague, how ready are you to respond to a disclosure of IPV? Don't answer to me, answer to yourself. Second item under accountability, communication. How well have you expressed your commitment to support victims of IPV? How well have you communicated that to your colleagues or to your employees? Don't answer, just sit with it. Second letter, P. Remember APR. P, prevention. This is all about policies and procedures. Do you have clear and comprehensive policies and procedures? Have you had your employees, or as a coworker, have you been educated on your policies and procedures? And when was the last time your staff or you were trained on bystander intervention, or how safely to challenge harmful behavior? Do you or your employees know the role of observers to create a sense of collective responsibility when witnessing harmful behaviors. So don't answer me, answer to yourself. And response systems, remember they are. This is all about reporting and responding to complaints. Every workplace is different, and with the pandemic, we are now dealing with different workplaces. You know, there are hybrid workplaces, there are only virtual workplaces. So your response systems have to respond to your reality and your workplace. Now, if I lived in a perfect world, and if I would ask for the perfect system, there's one key question I would ask in terms of our workplace's response system, and that is that it should empower employees by providing informed support services. What do I need? You're gonna have to investigate a complaint or a disclosure. When you do that, or while you do that, please make sure you understand the general effects of trauma. Showing empathy over judgment, it's so important. Foster safety. Be responsive to cultural, historical, and gender inclusion. Employers need to be aware of the impact of gender-based violence. When hiring, remember that I mentioned a few important key information we were given from survivors, and when you're supporting the long-term effects of trauma.